welcome to today's episode of Miracle Conversations. My name is Brittany New, and I'm an entrepreneur living in Barcelona, Spain. And I'm here with Dr. Dave Asomaning, who is an executive coach. And in this show, we get together once a month and we talk about miracle mindsets, Dave's specialty. So Dave has written an amazing book called Nightmares to Miracles, which is kind of inspired by the principles laid out in the book A Course in Miracles. So if you've ever heard about that book, that's basically all we talk about on this show, combined with Dave's synthesized versions of some of the lessons and his other tools that he has. He has this amazing toolbox for different things you can do to cultivate miracle mindsets. So today we're going to be talking about some of those tools and some of the lessons from A Course in Miracles as well. So before we get into it, Dave, why don't you introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Thanks, Brittany. Good to see you again this month.
Good to
Always,
see you.
always nice to do this with you. Thank you for that intro. So yeah, further intro. I'm an executive coach, and I live in Florida on the I-95 corridor, about an hour north of Palm Beach. So it's I think it's a great place to live. Although people say do a lot of trash talking about Florida, but I love Florida. So I specialize in supporting CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and other leaders to develop miracle mindsets, as you just pointed out, Brittany. And I really do have a deep conviction and a lot of experiences now with myself and clients that such miracle mindsets lead to improved effectiveness, ease, and fulfillment in our professional and personal lives. So, just a few more things by way of intro. We are covering the theme of miracles in 2023. In past years, we've had themes such as forgiveness, atonement, meditation, light, peace. And again, as you pointed out, Brittany, these themes are all drawn from A Course in Miracles, which I think is the best go-to source, one-stop go-to source for everything about miracles and miracle mindsets. So as you pointed out, I do rely on it quite heavily, and we do in our conversations. Also have lesson 47 as the anchor lesson for this year. That lesson says, God is the strength in which I trust. And then there's a paraphrase in it that I use. Through the love of God within me, I can resolve all seeming difficulties without effort and ensure confidence. Just great problem-solving mindset work around that lesson. So I've been carrying that through the whole year. And last thing I'll say is the shout out to you, Brittany, that I like to do on these calls, and just sort of want everyone to know that we've worked for quite a few years now. I think it's probably 4 or 5 years maybe. And on this show that we're doing, this podcast, monthly podcast we've done, this is our 3rd year doing it. But in the years prior to this, you helped me redesign my materials that I was using in my coaching. You helped me convert some very rough video modules into my online course. And then I was able to repurpose the online course videos that you did into the book. And then now here we are with this video show that we do that you then just brilliantly recast into an actual video podcast, nicely polished, an audio podcast and the blog. So I like to share all of that because it summarizes the miracle journey that this process has been about. And it doesn't just feel like, oh, I'm just running through some things mechanically. It really is a celebration of all the steps that have led to this. So I love doing that now as a part of our intro. So Brittany, anything you want to say about your work and where people can find you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again, Dave, for that shout out. Always a pleasure working with you. I say that on every call. But yes, my website is brittanynew.com. And I also have a YouTube channel. You can search my name, Brittany New, on YouTube. And then there I have some do it yourself tutorials for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit of how they can use media to optimize their businesses. So that's what I'm all about, is helping people use media to optimize businesses with branding and visual assets and those kinds of things. So give me a shout out through my website if you want to get to know more. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And um, last month, we talked a little bit because of the mind training tools that we were overviewing in that model, which people can check out in last month's episode. We looked at your approach to vision boards.
Yes,
You
that's right.
mentioned that, and then you sent me the link, and I looked at it carefully from beginning to end. So there's lots of good stuff on Brittany's YouTube channel, including that, which we'll be showcasing more as we go deeper into the chapters. So great. So that's all by way of some intro, and then transition to today's focus, which is going to be lesson 77 um, from A Course in Miracles, from the workbook of A Course in Miracles. I am entitled to Miracles. Just a quick layup on that. So up until now, starting in November, then December, January, February, March, those first shows of the cycle, the 2023 cycle on miracles, have really been from the principles of miracles, right at the very beginning of A Course in Miracles, or ACIM, as I sometimes refer to it. And there were 50 of these, and we broke them down into 10, uh, 5 sections of 10 each, which is what we've been doing so far. So this is the first call in which we're making a pivot to an actual lesson. Uh, in the previous years, that's more what we've been doing. So lesson 77 is going to be it today, and just a few highlights on that. And then we'll do a little bit on the book too. So I'm just going to jump right in, and then check in with you periodically to see if you have any thoughts or reactions as we go along. So lesson 77 says, I am entitled to miracles. And the first paragraph says, you are entitled to miracles because of what you are. You will receive miracles because of what God is, and you will offer miracles because you are one with God. Again, how simple is salvation? It is merely a statement of your true identity. It is this we will celebrate today. And then the second paragraph says, your claim to miracles does not lie in your illusions about yourself. It does not depend on any magical powers you have ascribed to yourself, nor on any rituals you have devised. It is inherent in the truth of what you are. It is implicit in what God, your source or father or parent is. It was ensured in your creation and guaranteed by the laws of God. So that's really going to be most of what I'm going to focus on, to bring out some of what I think are the powerful mindset implications of this, and then we'll see where that leads us. So um, right away, I know that the word entitlement can it can feel weird to people. That word, I am entitled to miracles, and then the sections that I read say you are entitled to miracles, and um, entitlement can feel like we're dealing with bratty kids or something. So I know that some people say, "Well, I'm entitled to miracles." Wow, that just doesn't sit well with me. And again, I get that. I think we all get it. We don't like entitled people, wherever we go. People who have a real sense of unjustified entitlement. It's just obnoxious, right? So, but this is really a message from Spirit to us that we were created to live miraculously. It is part of our identities. It's part of who we are. It's something we can ignore and forget about, and live apart from, and experience nightmares as a result of trying to live apart from it, from this identity. But it really is inherent in who we are. And so the sense of entitlement is more like a legal entitlement. It's almost like the way a beneficiary of a will can show up somewhere and say, this will says that I inherited this and it belongs to me. And then everybody pretty much has to stand down, eventually. I mean, it's so, so powerful. Even in my own family, I've seen the power of using wills, legal wills, to adjudicate very clearly and effectively inheritance, various inheritance systems and schemes. So it's sort of a technical thing, and then I get a chance to bring in. Last thing I'll say right now, and then check with you, Brittany, see if you have any further thoughts. Is I love to bring in the story of the prodigal child, the prodigal son, right? Because this really, I think, illustrates again and again this idea of legal entitlement to something, And so, without getting too deep into that story, it's just that this wayward child of this essentially king um, squanders his inheritance after having demanded it, and then comes back a very shabby version of himself, or it could be her. Her king could also be a queen. We could rearrange all of it to be as inclusive as possible. Um, but bottom line is that when this wayward child returns, the parent reinstates the child into all the full rights of being a part of the kingdom as a child uh, of inheritance within the kingdom, basically almost no questions asked. Now, this seems very odd to the sibling of the wayward child who stayed behind and took care of business. That sibling cannot really get with this. It just seems so unfair in so many ways. And the parent just keeps pointing to the idea that it's an identity issue, it's not a performance issue, right? So I just love this part about miracles, which is that it's not based on our performance, it's just based on our accepting that we are entitled to experience miracles. And then the rest of the passage just encourages us to use this. Um, uh, I don't want to call it a trump card or anything, but to rely on the availability of miracles to help us in any situation that we find ourselves in. So let me pause there, see, Brittany, if you have any thoughts at this point or questions.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get into this in a moment, but I appreciate that it calls out people who like to potentially take credit for manifesting their own miracles. So in, a lot of your teaching, we are cultivating tools and habits and rituals, some might say. But what can you distinguish between, using these rituals and kind of claiming ownership of the work that we're doing versus attributing that miracle work to God?
Yeah, so these are all, thank you for that. That's an excellent parsing through of some of the things we've done. So, in our last show, we were talking about the mind training toolkit. And there are these 12 sort of what I call tools for mind training, right? And then the previous show, the month before, we looked at the model of the psyche, right? And the model of the psyche is the one I've developed over the years, decades now, 3 decades, and the one that I'm partial to, is really about a visual representation of how the mind training tools help us to connect with our divine source within, right? So all these tools and everything we talk about are not inherently of value in and of themselves, other than that they help us to drill a pathway into connecting with source. That's the only reason that we're using it. And I'll sometimes call out gently and respectfully those who tend to be more secular, who seem to talk about the tools without any clear connection of the tools being about connecting with inner divine source, right? So there's a massive secularization around meditation and mind training and things like that. And the reason I'm gentle about this sort of maybe implied criticism or critique is that I have a lot of clients, very high powered, influential, successful people who don't want a spiritual or religious tone in the work that we do, right? So it's very easy in those circumstances to have a sort of a more secular approach, talking about tapping into your inner GPS or your intuition or the quantum field, or these are all sort of parallels. They're not the same thing, but they're they're adequate parallels, that keep the peace. So back to you. Any reactions to any of that? I hope I'm answering the question, but back to you if
Yeah,
I'm
you
not.
answered it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. I just wanted to make sure we spell that out for anyone who's new to this because it's like, hey, it's not about the rituals, but then why are we doing all of these things that seem like rituals? If it's something we're entitled to, can't we just close our eyes and expect that they happen automatically? Why do we have to do all this work? So I think you explained that very well. And it's the work is to connect to that source of energy and power that alone is able to make the miracles happen, not us on our own, right?
Very well said. Excellent. I'm so glad for that additional component you're adding. And that's I frequently say to certain clients, I don't say it to everybody, but to certain clients, when it seems appropriate and useful, I'll say that as Dave, I'm as dumb as a doorknob, you know? And I love saying that. I'm like, oh, Dave, yeah, Dave, I'm as dumb as a doorknob. And the people are like, why are you saying that? Why? Don't say that about yourself. And you're putting yourself down. I said, no, not really. The reason I'm saying that is because I don't want to get it twisted at any level that it has nothing to do, sort of like you just emphasized and like we just read, it has nothing to do with anything I ascribe to myself without source. The identity is almost like a legal identity that was or is attributed to all of us because of where we're sourced from in the divine. And without that, then you get the I'm as dumb as a doorknob. I can't. So I love saying that, not just to be provocative and not to annoy people, but it's just a reminder, to it's almost like an alcohol, somebody who's in a 12-step program, I guess, Alcoholics Anonymous and things like that, where they're like, yeah, I'm powerless without the divine to stay in my recovery and to stay sober. It's not going to work. I've tried and tried, and I make a mess of my life when I don't acknowledge that I'm powerless on my own. So, well, fantastic. So that's pretty much it for I Am Entitled to Miracles. I recommend using it for everything, right? One's wellness and health and all the things that go along with that, one's business, every aspect of one's business. I'm entitled to miracles, whether it's cash flow, whether it's new clients, whether it's products and services to get out there, whether it's the team one's trying to build, all of which are things that I look at very specifically and in detail with my clients. Um, Also, with one's circle of love, with regard to oneself, with regard to higher power and how to be in a good relationship with higher power, oneself. I'm entitled to miracles. I'm entitled to miracles. One's romantic relationships, um, family relationships, friendship circles, plants, animals, the earth, the cosmos, and then finally enlightenment. The sense of deeper divine purpose in one's life, right? And each of these sort of four pillars that are part of this coaching program we talk about on the show and in the book and in the online course, it's all about just really relying on the divine. Um, and just one more thing comes to mind, but let me check with you to see if there's anything you want to say.
No, go ahead. Seems like you're on a roll. There you go.
Yeah, so I was listening to somebody, I forget exactly who it was, but I was listening to somebody on TikTok 2 days ago, luminary, maybe an astrophysicist of some kind. It'll come back to me, I hope. But and they were like, "Oh God, well, there isn't rational empirical evidence for the existence of God, and if it helps you and you feel some comfort from it, great, but don't push it on other people." And I was like, "Wow, that's like, man, I have no words. Like, it's like." It's such a casual, anemic teeing up of what we're talking about, where it's not even like this isn't really just a fantasy It's not a projection like Freud said it was, because I need some parent in the sky because I'm afraid of mortality and things like that. It's like once you operationalize these things through the mind training, you understand that there is this incredible power that is working on your behalf and will help you. It's like a no-brainer. It's like I don't like quite saying it like this, but it's like the best AI times a billion. When you say to it, please do this for me. And again, God is not, or source is not like an ATM where you're like, okay, I need $1,000. Okay, where is it? And why did it take you so long? Not that kind of entitlement. But it's like, okay, I'm having some challenges here. I need a way through. Help me navigate, GPS me through this. Show me what I should do. Once you have experienced it, even just a few times, it's like there is no going back to anything else. And so that's my response, is a detailed kind of ongoing, obsessive counter to this tendency to be like, oh, if it helps you, okay. You won't ultimately get anywhere without it at the end of the day, is the point, for me anyway. So I'm countering this voice that I was hearing the other day. And it's amazing how some people in certain fields, they're just experts, they're geniuses, and we respect them, and rightly so. And then they move over into another field and they're like, well, I'll just say what I want to without like the deep expertise that can sometimes be required for it. I'm like, wait, what if I was just trash talking your field, like in some way? Anyway, don't, if you feel we need to edit this, please feel free, you go ahead. Back to
No,
you.
not for me, not for me. I think, yeah, that's why it's called faith at the end of the day. Nobody has evidence. But honestly, if the entire existence of the universe isn't evidence enough, then I don't know what to tell you. That's how I see it. But to each their own, to each their own.
No, no, it's true. And again, I rarely, hopefully anyway, lapse into this type of more controversial debating
Mhm,
approach, right? It's just because I heard it
mhm,
so recently, and I'm not really feeling triggered about it. It's just that I feel that at times it's okay to speak a little bit more directly, about this, and to say it may not be the same type of empirical evidence seeking and data gathering that people have, but
mhm,
once you've had the experience
mhm,
of being supported at this higher level,
mhm,
it's the evidence. You have the evidence. I mean, you've experienced it, and you've experienced it
mhm,
consistently, and it's almost scientific at that point.
mhm, mhm.
Um, so yeah, there's so much more on this, but we'll keep moving. So let's switch gears. Thank you so much for your input on this, Brittany. A lot of fun to talk with you about it. So let's and again, just to bring it out for our audience. I mean, that's the real sort of aim of what we're up to. So let's switch to the book, right? So one of the things we've been doing this year is, in addition to our treatment of the theme, which is miracles, as I mentioned before, we look at a chapter in my book, a section in my book, Nightmares to Miracles. So let's see if I can share the screen. Yes, okay. And you helped me with this too. I was doing some kind of complicated thing that would work sometimes and wouldn't work other times. And then you're like, wait, let me try it and see what happens. So here's the book cover. Like the cover, it's got a secret code in it. I don't say what the code is. I like for people who are interested to see if they can figure it out. Um, but one other quick thing about the cover is that I like to say that as the professional designer was doing this for me, the background was really completely all white, and then at some point they returned it to me with these gray smudges on it. I was like, what's that gray? I mean, it's a stark difference from the all white background to the. And I was like, I can't tell what those smudges are. And then it dawned on me that they were Native American dream catchers. And I was like, oh wow, the person did that on their own. And we're talking about nightmares to miracles. And wow, I was like, pretty cool. So I went from being confused and perplexed to really like, wow, another miracle there. I loved it. And I like giving that a shout out when we're switch to the book. So I'm going to go to chapter 5 again, just scrolling through the book a little bit here to show that it is an actual book. And as we teed it up earlier, got so many layers of miracles to it, including your assistance, Brittany, with some of the worksheets that eventually became high-res images in the book. And let's see, where are we? Okay, chapter 3. We want to get to chapter 5. So you'll see, let me just back up for a second here. So this is a way in which one of the high-res images is embedded here in the book. Now they're a bit small and they can be hard to navigate. So what I've done is I've provided a link to all the sheets in the book that are these color sheets. And if you go to the very end of the book, you'll see what the link is, if you have the book, to get to these sheets. And then there's a very short password that will give you access. If you need help with that at any point, just email me and I'll give you all that information. Just another way to, I think the high resolution images are worth having. Just by themselves, they summarize the whole coaching plan or program. So we're in chapter 5, which is entitled Cleaning. And I'll just read quickly from the Course in Miracles blurb that's at the top of the chapter. Each chapter starts with a little blurb from A Course in Miracles. It says, there is an advantage to bringing nightmares into awareness, but only to teach you that they are not real and that anything they contain is meaningless. Right? That's very powerful. It's like, oh, wow, that's how nightmares work. Once you wake up, you're like, oh, that was like, I mean, just I'm back to the real world. I can forget about whoever was chasing me with the machete and the nightmare. It's not, it's not real. So I think it's an apt way of beginning to look at cleaning. And then I'm going to switch to the actual sheet, the guide sheets for this. Is that showing up for you, Brittany, the whole Ho'oponopono sheet?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. So I'm not going to go into elaborate detail. We're trying to make up time. We did get a bit of a late start today, but really, this is how I introduce the coaching module. I go through A, B, C, D, and E, and each of them has an amazing sort of is an amazing opportunity to introduce somebody who wasn't familiar with this Hawaiian technique of cleaning, Ho'oponopono, to the process. Suffice it to say that the real heart of the matter with regard to cleaning is in C, which is these 4 affirmations. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. Right? So you do this as a practice for connecting with this inner source that we talked about, the divine. I love you, saying it to the divine. I'm sorry for doing things my own way and not relying on you more, and therefore making a mess of things. Like when Dave says he's as dumb as a doorknob, that's the direct relation to that, right? Please forgive me means please release me from the chains of mental habits, programming, even karma that are keeping me entrapped, and then thank you for that. So very powerful about establishing intimacy with this source. And a lot of clients and a lot of other people that I'm familiar with who tap into this just experience how liberating it is to do this as a practice. On the right-hand side of these sort of more traditional ways of saying the affirmations, I've come up with these alternatives just to explain what each affirmation is getting at. Otherwise, it can be a bit confusing, right? So I love you, that's the same as the first one. I'm sorry is I'm stuck. I'm really sort of just spinning my wheels. I'm suffering. I'm in a nightmare. I need to get out of it. Please forgive me translates to please delete my negative programming, which is keeping me stuck. You just say please delete or please delete my negative programming. And then the final one is thank you for getting me unstuck. Very powerful tools there. The only other thing that I'm going to highlight here is the Dr. Len's amazing story, right? So Dr. Len is the Hawaiian Ph.D. psychologist who pioneered the reintroduction of this ancient Hawaiian healing technique into the contemporary scene, starting maybe about 25, 30 years ago or so. And Joe Vitale is the person who really got very interested in this and helped both of them to write a book about it called Zero Limits, which I think is a book worth looking at. But the one of the most compelling stories in their book, which I think just has an enormous relationship to leadership, is that Dr. Len was hired in Hawaii to be the chief psychologist at a facility that was housing what are referred to as the criminally insane. So these are people who have done the worst types of crimes: murder, rape, pedophilia, arson, just brutal, with brutal consequences. And they also have clear diagnoses: schizophrenia, borderline conditions, bipolar conditions, depression, anxiety, all of it. And so when Dr. Len got to this facility, these inmates were heavily medicated, they were heavily shackled all the time. There was high turnover from the staff. It was just a toxic place. The staff did not like working there. People got burned out very quickly. And they even make a note in their explanation of all of this that even plants wouldn't grow in the building, right? So Dr. Len was considered to be a very strange sort of psychologist because he didn't actually do one-on-one counseling with the inmates. He stayed in his office and reviewed the files and cleaned on the files. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please. And over the sort of maybe first 6 months he was there, inmates didn't need to be as heavily medicated or shackled, turnover rates reduced, plants started growing in the building, right? So whether a person believes this or not, Dr. Len, you'll see him on YouTube saying absolutely true, a true story about, it's the facility is shut down. I think it's shut down after 4 years. Not exactly sure why, but it'd be interesting to do a follow-up on it at some point. But I just think this is an amazing metaphor or model, even if you don't believe it literally, for what you can do as a leader who's running an enterprise with a lot of people and all the conflicts that can happen when you're running an enterprise, right? So I usually like to tee this up for my clients as, just not some woo-woo thing that we're doing, but if you can really get this as a leader of a team, and the team can get it, and then the team can force multiply it out to the rest of the enterprise, it's an enormous way to transform the organization from the inside out. So that's it. Brittany, any thoughts, anything you want to say or comment before we start to wind down for today?
So just going off of what you were saying about the leaders being able to do this, then you would recommend cleaning on other people's behalf then? And do you do that as a coach?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
all the time. So I will
Okay.
even in the complimentary call when a person isn't signing up with me yet, they're just, are we a good fit? I use it to see if we would be a good fit.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'll do a
Very
quick.
powerful.
I'll say what's one of your toughest pain points about any aspect of the problem that you just told me about that you want to work on. Oh, this happened to me when I was 15, or this happened to me when I was 21, or this happened to me when I was 6. I say, go, let's clean on it. I'll say it. I'm sort of like the Zumba instructor, I'll say, please delete my negative program about when I was abused as a 15-year-old, and then just say it with the ad lib after me, and we'll do that a couple of times. Now, is there anything you want to ad lib on, just to get them right into it? And I say, whether we work together or not, you can read the book and use this for the rest of your life. The whole point being that when there's conflict on a team of any kind, it's really because of the submerged pain points that are bumping into one another. And people are actually attracted to one another because of their complementary pain points. That's how people fall in love, right? Now, people don't like that when I say that sometimes, but I'm not taking the fun and the romance out of falling in love, but the reason people gravitate towards other people with such obsession and passion is because they're recognizing subconsciously in one another the pain that they can resolve, and if it's not resolved, then it's hell on earth, or it can be. So anyway, yeah, the a long answer to your question, but the bottom line is I get it going as soon as possible because it's very parallel to A Course in Miracles and all the mind training about releasing the blockages to connecting with Source. Right? It's the same. It's the same basic methodology, but it's much simpler to teach and get people tuned into as a precursor to maybe A Course in Miracles if they want it. But I'm not pushing that on people. It's whatever works, including a million other things apart from Ho'oponopono and A Course in Miracles. So, yeah, great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that answer.
You are welcome. So we're going to wind down for today. Brittany, you usually have some very helpful calls to action, not to put you on the spot, but anything you want to say to.
Yeah, just in celebration of today's conversation, if anyone's curious to go on YouTube and look up Ho'oponopono, you said there's some YouTube resources, right? Or was it an audio? If they want to look into some guided Ho'oponopono?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's tons of stuff. You just put
Yeah,
Ho'oponopono in, if
yeah.
you just tons of stuff. 10 years
Okay.
ago, very sparse. It has
Mm-hmm.
exploded in the last 10 years. You'll find
Wonderful.
somebody even sent me a 10 hour. It's the longest YouTube video I've ever seen.
Wow.
A 10 hour session of
Wow.
Ho'oponopono cleaning everything. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, go on a Ho'oponopono adventure and just see what you find on YouTube, everyone. So there's the call to action, a little homework assignment for this month. And thanks again, Dave, for a great show this month. And I look forward to the next one.
Likewise, Brittany, thank you so much for helping with this show, and just a delight every month to do this with you. And it's a delight to hear from our audience too. We've been getting feedback about the different aspects of this that people like. Some people love the blog, they can get through it lickety split, just speed read it. Some people like the podcast, they can listen to it in the car and without having to be distracted by the audio podcast, I meant to say, without being distracted by the visuals. And then some people really like to see the interactions between us and what's going on. So we're covering
Mhm.
all the bases. But thank you. Without you, this miracle of getting this information wouldn't be out there. So, and to our audience too, our growing audience, it's just a wonderful experience to get your feedback. And thank you for enjoying the show and giving us the feedback about it. So we'll see you all next month. Thank you, Brittany. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.